Oh, we've already got the volunteers. Wonderful. So a self-defense demonstration. So we'll get that underway. Tomer, toda rabba. You're very welcome. Please.
Okay, best that to have some practice after we just finished, but we'll try to do it as easy as possible. First of all, again, it's not a Krav Maga class. It's a very basic self-defense, and we've spoken earlier about community awareness, about the CARE project. This is exactly what CARE is all about, giving the possibility for every person to learn how to defend himself with the basic means that he or she has in order to save themselves from a situation. If you want to do Krav Maga, it's not something in 20 minutes. It's something of many weeks, many years of practice all over the same techniques to know how to defend yourself. But we might find ourselves in a situation where we have to defend ourselves from certain things that happen. Somebody that attacks us physically, somebody that approaches with a stick, somebody that approaches with a knife. What should I do? There are some basic things that we need to remember in order to save ourselves. Today we will focus on a knife defense, but we have some programs together with the EGA to give you in the future as community leaders, but for all communities everywhere, more in the self-defense techniques and some practice for you. But you have to understand, after this session, just to give you a small taste. And I will have to ask at the end, you will practice a bit yourself too. Be very careful. We're giving you some knives here. It's not to stab your friends here. It's just to simulate. We'll do it very easy. It's just you will have the idea if somebody is attacking us, I have to do the worst thing to do is not doing anything at all. So the minute we understand we have to do something, and believe me, even the best Krav Maga instructors in the world, they sometimes freeze in a situation where they don't know what they have to do. And our goal is to act, to do something. Best to do the best thing, but if not, at least to do something in order to save our lives and of our families or our friends. Um, After, if you have any questions, I'm here the whole day, the evening, tomorrow, so we can practice even more if you like. But let's just demonstrate um, a stick attack, a knife attack. Sorry. But a small question before we'll have here our volunteers presenting the exercise, and after you, what's the best thing to do if somebody attacks us? Very easy, very good. There is a problem, we run away. This is what I teach my children. This is what I teach my wife. This is what I teach every community member. You feel danger, you feel a problem, just go away and run as fast as possible to the safest place for you. Could be the synagogue, could be a Jewish store, could be a school, could be your house. Whenever you feel safe and you can lock the place, first thing to do. But if we cannot run away, what should we do? We can call the police, but somebody is attacking me. What should we do? We should act. Good. Some of you already did it. We will use the strongest weapon that we have. Tomorrow we had a very good protest to stop anti-Semitism in Antwerp, which was very excellent, very good. And there we shouted all together to stop. It's very good. But we want to shout stop when we are in the danger itself, not only when we're coming together, all of us, but we're in danger. So the minute I feel a danger, I will shout the strongest as possible. And I will say, stop. For what reason? in order for others to understand I'm in danger, because together we're much stronger than me alone. And maybe because me shouting will give him the 1 second thought to stop, and this will be my chance to run away. So first thing, somebody approaches me, I will shout, "Stop!" as hard as possible. Even if it's not mine, it's even better. But I expect for everyone of you to do when you teach your community members, when you're in the synagogue at school, you tell them there is a problem, you shout, "Stop!" immediately, and then you act. On a stick, on a knife offense, my only chance to survive, and you saw the movie lately, what happened in Germany, that they stabbed these ex-politicians and an officer. It's very difficult to get out. But if you scream, you'll get help. And if you block him and attack and run away, you might survive. So what I want you to do today after when we practice, you block, you attack, and you run. Now we cannot simulate it to the detail here because you cannot actually run away, but you will be able to simulate the shouting, stopping, and simulate an attack. I will show you a demonstration how we're teaching it, of course, in a very slow motion phases, and then we'll practice it. They will demonstrate it in front of us, and we'll practice all together. And believe me, don't think that if you're weaker, smaller, or if it's a man, if it's a woman, you cannot do it. Everybody can do it. Use what you have. Use your hands. Use any tools. Use your bag. Whatever you can use in order to stop it from throwing at him. I can use a chair, a table, whatever I have, in order to stop the person in front of me. They either will step from the top or either from the down in order to stab us in vital parts that could cause a lot of damage. If I will get a cut or stab at my arm, I will survive. Okay, but if I get somewhere here, it could be vital. I don't want it to happen. So the most important is the minute somebody approaches me with a knife, I will shout and block. And the same time, I will attack with my other hand. If I have a keys or something sharp in my pocket, I will use it. So, what I wanted to do, I see, I'll try to stand and the tree. I see somebody up. What should I do? Stop! I have one to protect myself. And I will always look at the problem. Stop! You heard it? And block the hand with the knife. Okay, the minute I block here, I did the first one. Stop and block. Stop! Block. From here, I'll take the advantage. And this is your time now to be able to run away. You'll give a punch, middle of space, in the nose, because as strong as it can be, the tallest it can be, the most it won't be as strong as it can be. And here, punch, you go down. Then I can run away. You have nails. Use them. Go with your nails inside his eyes. Why? Those are places where we get a good hit. We will go down. I will go inside, and if possible, I will grab his face. From here, I can just tear his face apart. And from here, while I did this, stop! And I block, I go in, I hit with my hand to the front. Immediately I will grab his mouth, it will hurt him. And from here, I will run away as fast as possible. Okay? This is what, as a basic first lesson, we expect you to do, and it can be for a knife attack, for a stick attack. It's a different method. What do you think should be the best thing to do when somebody attacks me with a stick? I will not go back, I will go front. Why? Because if I'm close to him, he cannot hit me with a stick. And then I can hit him back. When I go back, this is what happened in our community. When somebody came with a stick, they all went back and just got a stronger hit instead of getting closer and avoiding it. And here we will act. Okay, so I want you to demonstrate. And I understood your husband and wife. It's a demonstration, so please don't take all the frustration out. Yes, this is your chance, both of you. Now, remember. Good. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Stop. And run away. But we run away, not stopping here. We stop at the end of the place, okay, as far as possible. But in real life, you will stop in a few steps because this is how you train. We train like we want to act in real life. We don't train and say, in real life, I will do it differently. Because then you'll do the same like you train because you will be in a lot of stress. And we want you to train like in real life. Once again. Stop. Very good. You want to change places? Yes. Good, good. But you saw what happened. The attacker thought he's stronger because he came with a knife. And the minute he approached with his hand to the face, what did she do? She went back. Then I will push her more back and I will run away to a safe place. Okay? Because he's not expecting, the attacker doesn't expect us to act. Because they know we will freeze. And the minute we act, we already have a bigger chance to save ourselves. Last time. I give you another chance. Good. Last time. You first scream, block, hit, and run away. If not, I'm running after you. Again. Stop. And? Okay. Very good. Any questions? We're very limited on time. Normally, a session of self-defense just about knife is 2 lessons of 1.5 hours each. We're doing it now in 10 minutes with these projectors in my eyes. So it's not the ideal condition, but it's just for you to get the idea because we want you as community leaders to understand the need in learning self-defense, that everybody can do it and bring it to your communities together with DGA, together with the EU Care. Those two can help you to bring it to your communities. If you don't have any questions, we'll stand up, put the chairs under the table, that you'll have a bit of a space. Each couple take 1 knife. Be careful, the knife, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to do it. We'll do it in a later stage when we're all dressed for a self-defense session. Guys, please listen for this. Guys, some safety instructions. I know it's probably the fun part now of this session. You're holding a knife, a metal one. So please be careful not to touch each other, not to stick it in each other's eyes. Just do the technique. I want to hear you scream like he's attacking you for real. You're stopping, you simulate and hit towards his face, and you run away. Are you ready? Those that want to participate, on your own tempo, you start. You can continue. This is my son. Stop. Try to change between you. If all of you did once, we can take our seats back. בסדר? עוד משהו? עוד משהו להוסיף? לא, אין לי בעיה, אם תגיד לי להוסיף עוד משהו, אני אוסיף. עוד משהו, איך אני בזמני?
הכי טוב שיש.
לעשות סיומת?
לא.
אבל זה מה שנעשה ברגע שהתוכנית הגדולה תתקבל, אבל...
אני אמרתי, ששמעתי את זה, אמרתי לדוד או לא? בלי קשר אנחנו נעשה את זה.
אני אעשה סיומת? תודה רבה. Okay, I'll do a closure just to finish it nicely. One minute because we want to continue with the program. It's really, we did it in less than 20 minutes. There's a lot to do, but it's doable. Normally a session of self-defense, it's 8 classes where we are able to give a community member the basic needs for him to feel more safer and more secure in case of emergency. It can be if somebody is coming with a stick, with a knife. Somebody asked me here, what happens if somebody comes from down? We cannot practice all the techniques. But if somebody is attacking me from down, will be the same method. I'll scream, I'll block, and I'll try to hit, punch him, tear his face apart, whatever I can do in order to be able to run away. Same if he comes with his fists, same if he will come with a stick, same if he will come with a knife. I will shout, I will block, I will hit, I will run away. But if you have the chance to run away from before, do it from before. Any questions about it? No? Guys, thank you very much, and see you in the future.
Thanks a lot, Tomer. Really, really useful. I wish we had more time, but thank you for your skill. Thank you for keeping our communities safe, especially in Antwerp. It was quite a sight to see everyone taking part in that in a light-hearted way. Of course, it's a very serious matter that we even have to do that in the first place. So we're going to move on to our afternoon session now. And just as a reminder of what it is that we're talking about regarding fighting back on campuses and in schools, we have a short video for you.
Radical pro-Palestinian rallies on U.S. college campuses have Jewish students in fear for their safety.
Anti-Semitic messages posted online as graphic threats of murder, sexual violence, and comparison to animals.
Columbia students suggested labeling local shops that support Israel's right to exist, quote, with a Star of David. A law professor recently advocated for the removal of Israeli students from campus.
So these protests, they're not pro-Palestinian, they're anti-Jewish and anti-Israel.
People want to kill me and want to bomb my home and our home as a Jewish community. It's terrifying.
We have students on our campus calling out by name explicitly that they want certain students on this campus to die slowly.
Many professors in Siena and all over Italy signed a petition supporting a boycott against Israel in academical and any international relations. When we see slogans and flags which state from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and slogans such as support the Intifada.
I am a professor here. I have every right to be everywhere on campus. You cannot let people that support Hamas on campus and me, a professor, not go on campus. Let me in now.
We go to the #1 public school in the world. These people are smart. They are educated. They know what they're saying. They know what an intifada is. They want an intifada. They want to see the mass genocide of Jews.
So some of you might not know, in fact, I'm sure you don't know, but I'm actually a closet Star Wars fan. So what I'm about to say hopefully will make sense, but the force is extremely strong in the Jacobs family, not only with Chief Rabbi Jacobs, but also their son, Yankee. It's my great pleasure to invite Yankee Jacobs, who is from the Netherlands Student Rabbinate, to take forward the next panel. And Yankee's promised us a lively session. So thank you, Yankee.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's panel discussion on combating anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism on European university campuses. I'm honored to be your moderator for this conversation. My name is Yankee Jacobs, and I'm the rabbi for the Netherlands Student Rabbinate, serving students studying all across the country, from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, Maastricht, Groningen, Nijmegen, Leiden, Delft, Utrecht, Eindhoven, and so on. When Rabbi Magolin called me and asked me to moderate this session, he made it clear that he is not looking for testimonies. We all know the stories. This session is not about making you aware of the situation on campuses, because that is preaching to the choir. You all have children, grandchildren, nephews, colleagues, and friends at various universities who are dealing with these issues firsthand. So we don't need to dwell on what is happening. Our focus here today is going to be on the response. How do we combat this issue? How can we change the narrative on the campuses and in schools? And most importantly, how can we ensure that an entire generation is not educated to demonize Israel and those who support Israel, including the Jewish community? We're very privileged to have a diverse panel with us today, bringing a variety of perspectives to this important discussion, and I hope these perspectives will be educational and inspiring for all of us. Let us begin by introducing our distinguished panelists. Gerald Steinberg is a professor of politics at Bar-Ilan University. Professor, you can come on. Professor Steinberg is an academic and political scientist, an activist, and he's also the founder and president of the NGO Monitor, a leading think tank focusing on non-governmental organizations. Mrs. Alana Ibn. Alana Ibn has served as youth leader for numerous youth activities, for numerous initiatives, including BBYO, and currently serves as teen activity director for Mosaic, a project of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Achira Beck is student of law and serves as the chairman of the ER, which is the local Jewish Student Association of the Netherlands. Emmanuel Slater is a student of anthropology at the University of Amsterdam and is very vocal and very sharp. And we are so happy that she was able to join us today, as she's getting married in just a few weeks in Israel. And last but not least, Professor Bart Vallet, who is a professor of Jewish studies at the University of Amsterdam, a sought-after speaker and a frequent guest on Dutch national television. As a historian and a board member of the European European Association of Jewish Studies, Professor Vallet has a great overview of the issues at hand here in the Netherlands and across Europe. And we're going to ask, I'll sit down. This session will be divided in 3 parts. And for the first part, we're going to ask all participants to share something about themselves and their position on this issue. And for this, they have 4.5 minutes. So the question is, could you please introduce yourself, share a bit about your background and involvement with this issue of anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism, what motivated you to engage with this issue, and how would you describe your position on this topic, and what perspectives or approaches do you bring to the discussion? And I'm going to put on my timer because we have 4.5 minutes for every one of you. Thank you. Professor Steinberg.
Thank you very much. I hope that we can get the slides in the back working. I don't know where to aim this, because I don't know where the computer is. Over there. Okay, good. Thank you very much. There's a lot of issues to raise in 4.5 minutes, now down to 4 minutes. So I will make it very quick. I will dispense briefly with all the thank you for so many people to make this conference happen in very difficult times. I think it's extremely important, not just for those of you in this room, but for all of your communities and everybody else who's watching and knows how important the work that you're all doing here is, and it will be for the future. The session, as you said, is under the category of fighting back. And I guess I will define myself, certainly for the last 25 years, as having been involved in fighting back in one of a number of aspects. You talked about changing the narrative. I would also say changing the people, changing the organizations that are leading this very poisonous, very negative narrative. I have to spend very briefly a couple of minutes, less than a couple of minutes, a few seconds, talking about why I got into this and why this is so important, why organizations and frameworks that claim to promote human rights and international law are now at the forefront of hate, propaganda, and anti-Semitism. In 1948, in the shadow of the Shoah, the United Nations adopted a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, we're looking 76 years later, that Universal Declaration, which was written specifically so that we can all say never again, has been weaponized against the Jewish people. The process that took place is very important to understand, because that's the reason that we see all of these, one of the main reasons, not the only reason, that we see so many attacks on campuses and elsewhere. When Jews are attacked, when Jewish institutions are attacked, when Jews are told they are not part of civil society, it's because they say, you Jews are causing genocide. You see it all the time on television. You see it on social media. You're violating human rights. You're the world's worst example of violating international law. We see it very close. How far is The Hague from here? Whatever, half an hour, and we see it there every day, and I don't have to go through that again. I will also skip the history, the Soviet Union, Stalin, the very far left that adopted that post-colonial agenda, which included Israel as a racist society, apartheid, all the way back in the 1950s. Some of the people with gray hair like me, will remember the infamous UN resolution that Zionism is racism of 1975. But the issues we're dealing with today were revised at something called the Durban Conference, the United Nations Durban Conference on the elimination of racism, that took place in 2001 to celebrate the end of apartheid, and it was hijacked and used in order to weaponize human rights. All the things we're talking about now. The language I have, I won't read it, you can see it in the background. The language tells you exactly where we are now, but this was 23 years ago, and that's when I began to see that the organizations that controlled that agenda, non-governmental organizations claiming to promote human rights, democracy, peace, humanitarian aid, it's a huge industry, along with the United Nations, along with academic institutions, along with many journalists, have made this transition in weaponizing the terms of human rights. All the language we see now was out there at Durban in 2001 in the NGO forum that took place, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, all your favorite organizations. If we'll go on quickly now to the next image, because I want to get to Tachlis. There's a lot of money. It's an industry. And I think almost everybody in this room will find themselves as part of it. This is government money. This is taxpayer money. It's approximately 100 million euros a year. I'm rounding off in different currencies. Some of them, Sweden, Germany, have some very large amounts of money going in every year. The European Union, and then your money going to the UN goes to feed this process. These organizations that day after day say Israel's committing war crimes. And that's what NGO Monitor is looking at, because I argue that if I can't convince people that what they're saying is evil and moral, at least we can take out a significant amount of the money that's propelling this. So we'll just go very quickly through a couple of examples, and hopefully I will still stay within the time frame. Since we are in the Netherlands, since we had the conversation, we talked about Oxfam Novib.
But Professor, we're going to get back to you soon.
Okay, so
4 minutes has passed. We're going to go to the next professor.
I can leave this up for a minute.
Yeah, you have a chance later on
where your
to
tax money goes.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Bart Vallet.
Yes, working. Yeah, excellent. As a professor, my view is more from within the university, which means as a professor of Jewish studies, I teach actually the subjects that really matter. I think I've been teaching the most difficult lectures of the whole university these past few months on the conflict, on Zionism, on the state of Israel, that is, I think, the most important thing I want to bring to the discussion here is that like mostly this discussion shouldn't be, on the one hand, it should be about facts. It should be about a thorough study. But on the other hand, especially the debates we have now in academia, in European academia, I would say we need to rephrase the debate. And ultimately, this is a debate about academic freedom, about academic virtues, about how we discuss difficult subjects together in academia, for which we need nuance, for which we need solid reasoning, careful study of the subjects, which means that you need, especially for these subjects, you need time. So you can't, like in 5 minutes, summarize a conflict of many decades and take simple black and white stances. What we need is an academic approach, academic virtues, and that's only possible through academic freedom. So my plea basically is not just to force yourself in fighting pro or contra, because that's not so constructive, but to reframe the debate. Ultimately, this should be about what universities are meant to be, and what knowledge is, and the search for knowledge, and using our academic virtues really to solve as well, at least to discuss these questions. So I would say that's my main point here.
Still have a minute and a half left.
Wow.
But we'll go to the next speaker, because the issue is not only at the universities, it's also at other places, and I would say it's even the best and the brightest of ours are not always sharing the position I think most of the people here in the hall hold. So I will let you introduce yourself and share with us what you want to share.
So I'll just start by explaining what Mosaic United is, because I think we're unique. You can see our logo up there. Mosaic United is a strategic partnership between the State of Israel through the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and philanthropists worldwide. The idea is to build connection between Israel and the diaspora. And we invest in programs and institutions that strengthen Jewish identity and connection to Israel. And my division specifically focuses on teens and young adults. And our solution is simple. It's build relationships, bring people to Israel, and let Israel and Israelis speak for themselves. We have decades of research now showing the long-lasting impact of a teen trip to Israel. It's one of the most effective ways to strengthen Jewish identity and connection to Israel. And it's not a short-term impact. We now have data showing the long-lasting impact. So someone who visits Israel as a teen is more likely to be involved in Jewish institutions later on, is more likely to be dedicated to Jewish causes, celebrate Jewish life, and so on. So our program essentially is to grow Jewish teens visiting Israel. We offer vouchers in match funding. We offer vouchers of $3,000 per participant for teens all across the globe, Jewish teens, to spend some time in Israel. And in addition to that, because we want this to be an educational and meaningful experience, we take a holistic approach. So we also provide funding for educational infrastructure, to grow staff, support, pre-learning, post-programming, and so on. And this summer, and into winter trips, we'll be bringing 1,700 teens from all across of Europe and South America. I'll just say that birthright is too late. So we are talking about before birth, right? We're talking about teens, because we see a small but growing number of Jewish anti-Zionists on campus. And I think one of the anecdotes that is to equip our teens with Jewish pride and Jewish resilience and Jewish positivity, and bringing them to Israel and having them experience Israelis and the culture and food, etc., is one of the best ways to do that. In fact, every trip has a mifgash requirement, which means that Israeli teens join the trip for a few days, live together, hike together, learn together, build relationships. And the truth is that you can take a 30-second TikTok video and pit it against a real live human with whom you have a relationship, and the human will win every single time, because propaganda just crumbles in the face of real connection. One other initiative I'll just mention briefly that we've expanded specifically for this summer was in the wake of October 7th. We very quickly realized that teens would not be visiting Israel this summer. And we said, if we can't bring teens to Israel, then we'll bring Israel to teens. And in partnership with the Jewish Agency, we're sending 1,000 Israeli teens to summer camps across Europe, South America, and the United States. These are teens from affected communities, from the Gaza envelope and from northern evacuated communities. And it provides not only respite and relief to teens, but also helps our diaspora teens build connection and tap into Jewish peoplehood. And I'll just finish by saying that it's a difficult time. Our teens are not immune to pressure and propaganda. I think if we are sometimes affected by pressure and propaganda, then they are as well. But our teens are our best voices, they're our strongest advocates, and most importantly, we need to invest in them because they're our Jewish future.
That was a beautiful presentation. And I'll go to the next panelist of today, Emmanuel.
Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Slater. I'm a Canadian Israeli, and I moved here 3 years ago to start a bachelor degree. When I moved here, I had absolutely no intention of doing any kind of advocacy work. I wanted to receive a bachelor degree. And so when Yankee, our moderator for today, asks, what motivated us to begin our work in advocacy, I would say that it was something that was demanded of me as an Israeli on campus today. When I first arrived, I would get these very odd glances and sort of disrespectful questions upon telling people that I was Israeli. And I started following the path of where it was that these kinds of views were coming from. And in my position within the anthropology department, that path took me towards the curricula. So I started looking into the curriculum of, for example, Introduction to Anthropology of the Middle East, or political anthropology introductory courses. And I started realizing that it is incredible just how misrepresented and underrepresented the Jewish people are, Israeli people are. An example of that is within the Middle Eastern course. There's absolutely no mandatory literature assigned on the experience of Israelis whatsoever. We are not main characters to any story that is being told. And so when I thought about in what way how it might look to fight back, and from my position within the university, I think that fighting back is most important, of course, academically, scholastically, and really through the curriculum. It's such a high demand to place on the shoulders of university students, many of which, 18 years old. And I completely agree with what you said, that, students or teens can be our best assets, but it's also a big ask. And I suppose one thing that would be extremely helpful to fight back would be to really have voices within the university coming from higher up, demanding to look at these curricula, demanding to look at, what it is that students are being taught, whose voices are being represented to students and whose, of course, are not. I think very quickly we'll, understand whose voices really are missing. And I think that that's a very important place to start.
Thank you so much. And I must say, you're doing a great job in advocating for Israel and the Jewish community on the campuses. So thank you for that. We'll go to the next panelist of today, Achira.
Hello, my name is Achira Beck. I'm the president of the Dutch Union of Jewish Students. And it's an honor to be here with every one of you. It's really amazing to see how many people are here to support us. And I want to give my special thanks to our moderator, Yanki, because I've known Yanki for all my life. And it's actually funny that he's a moderator because he will be even a better panelist speaking about what the student situation is here in the Netherlands. So I will tell more about our organization. We started in 1976, almost 50 years ago. And ever since we started, we had ups and downs. And last COVID, the pandemic, was a really hard down for us because we couldn't come together. I started being active in ER 2.5 years ago after the pandemic. And our main drive was to build community. Last weekend, we had a little seminar with Jewish students, leaders from all over the Netherlands. And we came to the conclusion that the reason why we are all there is just one reason. It's Ahavat Israel, the love for our nation. That's the thing that empowers us, that makes us stand up. Because to be honest, on an individual level, I've asked them, what's your challenges? What are your challenges? And standing up is very, very dangerous right now. It requires a lot of courage because if you stand up, you become a target. And a lot of us feel like we are targets right now. Some of us are asking, how do you manage social media? That's why we started developing strategies to empower our students. For example, this is something what I just heard at the Krav Maga session just before now. The worst thing to do is to do nothing. And that's the reason why we started to collaborate with self-defense organizations to make sure people feel the strength in their body to stand up and they're not afraid. You can see after even one session of Krav Maga or any other self-defense martial arts that people stand more proudly, are more confident in their bodies. Next to that, we also work on being united, on being a collective. Our main strategy is to collaborate and to know and to really get to know each other, know what our visions are, what our mission is. Because we think to have a safe base to work from is very important to feel confident and empowered. In the end, what also is important is of course the public, how we handle the public. And I think the people before me have spoken very clearly and very perfect, better than I can even, about what we should do. But I will go into more what I've heard from my students, what they need. And first of all, what they need is more engagement with the university itself. And we are working on that. We have a strategy to how to work with universities, how to be in contact with their boards. Next to that, we are also working on being more public and being more visible on campus itself. Because until now, most of the Jewish students have been hiding or have been silent. And now is the time to speak up and to stand out and to let other students know that we are here, that we are visible, we are present. Furthermore, it's also important to battle the misinformation on campuses. And we are now establishing an information campaign for students, not only Jewish students, but also non-Jewish students, to let them know what the real deal is, what Judaism is, why we are important, why we are here, and why it's important to fight anti-Semitism on campus. On an individual, collective, and a public level, we are fighting for our students. I think that we together, in this way, we can make a real change.
Thank you so much, Akhira. That was beautiful. Because of the shout out at the beginning, because of the beautiful shout out at the beginning, I wanted to give you an extra minute. I have two questions, and I'm going to ask the first one to Emmanuel. Then I'm going to ask both questions one after the other, and Emmanuel will answer the first one. Then Professor Steinberg, I'm asking you to answer the second question. The first question, Emmanuel, is in what forms does anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism typically manifest itself on campuses today? And are there specific incidents or patterns that stand out? And the follow-up question on that to Professor Steinberg is, can you discuss the source of the rising anti-Israelism on campuses in recent times? Is this a sudden phenomena, or is the part of a longer build-up? Also, we'll start by Emmanuel. Is there anything you can, form of anti-Semitism, anti-Israelism that you can identify?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll begin with the anti-Israel. I mean, of course, they're much more closely related than I have to tell you all. But I'm finding more and more that attitude towards Israel has become a sort of litmus test for whether or not a student is a good Jew or not. And what I mean by that is a lot of times in conversations about the Middle East or politics or just people's views more broadly within the university space, questions arise in the form of, yeah, but are you a Zionist? Or yeah, but do you support Israel? These kinds of questions that really shut down a conversation from the get-go. And you find that people want to stop engaging once you admit to be a Zionist, or once once you're not ready to denounce your Israeli identity once it's demanded of you. So that's definitely a form of anti-Israelism that's taking center stage on campuses right now. I would also say that as for anti-Semitism, what we're seeing now is that the middle ground has shifted really drastically. So what was a normal thing to say or to think before October 7th is no longer the case now. It has shifted further, and it has shifted further towards animosity towards Jews. And an example of that really is the relationship that people have with the word intifada. Whereas once people might not feel comfortable to share whether or not they think that an intifada is justified before October 7th. And when I say this, I mean European students, international students, students not from the Middle East whatsoever, with no relation. Justifiably so, they wouldn't feel comfortable to call for an intifada, call for such a violent uprising that would not affect them, would not reach their doorstep. Whereas now it's perfectly appropriate to do so in the circles that I often find myself in. And when you turn back towards someone holding these kinds of ideologies and you say that, what you're talking about is, at the end of the day, the indiscriminate killing of Jews, people get very uncomfortable. And I think that it's important to address that discomfort head on and to not sort of be just as uncomfortable as them, but to really continue along that path of conversation to make people really understand what it is that they've become so comfortable to say. So to answer your question, I think these are some forms that we're seeing anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism popping up, and also how to address them.
Yes, I'll give you a follow-up question on that, because you're not really mentioning prominently the demonstrations and the encampments, etc. So for an outsider, it might sound that you're just talking semantics, which you're not, but people might understand it that way. So maybe you can enlighten us how these issues, because you are part of the Jewish student community, and you see what's going on, you see what's doing to people. And before we go to the next part about fighting back, maybe you can explain to the public and to us how these issues impact the overall climate and inclusivity of university campuses. And also, maybe you can tell us something if you see noticeable differences between universities in different countries. But the main question is, how does it impact the climate and feeling of safeness and academic and the right of academic freedom within university setting?
So I can't speak too much about the differences between different countries, because what I've really experienced is here in the Netherlands, and more specifically Amsterdam. But before we got to the encampments in the first place, we had a growing, there was a rise that we were seeing of protests in campus, so what they called occupations of main lobbies, main halls of university buildings. And in these protests, you know, they were saying, we don't want no Zionists here. They were getting increasingly more aggressive. And what I started seeing is more and more of my Israeli and Jewish friends told me that they were not coming to campus anymore. They didn't feel safe coming. And one person that I actually heard from, you know, wrote to her study advisor and said, I don't feel safe on campus. What can I do? In what ways can the university provide me safety? And the advice essentially was, don't come. That was the solution.
It's a good solution. You feel safe.
Exactly. And so this is the kind of trend we're starting to see. And then, of course, this erupted with the encampment movement, which is really bubbling and continues within Amsterdam and beyond in the Netherlands and, of course, in the world. And I actually, the first time that there was an encampment on my campus, I went there. I wanted to see what was going on. I wanted to see what was being said. And I went in, and the amount of hatred in people's eyes when they saw me, we're talking about my classmates. We're talking about, to be completely honest with you guys, we're talking about people that I've welcomed into my home for Shabbat dinners. We're talking about people I've sat next to in class for 3 years. Kind of look at me, shake their head at me, say to their neighbors, she's a Zionist, get her out of here, this kind of rhetoric. And within, we're talking about glorification of Ismail Haniya. We're talking, you know, glorification of Intifada, so on and so forth. And so the result of that, as I said before, is increasingly Jewish and Israeli students not feeling safe to come to campus. The response to that being, so then don't come. That's the solution. As well as just greater intimidation. And of course, there's students who have lost family members, whether it's in this year or to the Intifadot, and you know, they're coming to campus and they're being confronted with this rhetoric.
Thank you, Professor Steinberg. Can you discuss the source of this phenomena? Is it a sudden phenomenon? Is it part of a is it part of a larger buildup? And is it primarily driven by political, social, or cultural factors?
I will give you a classic short academic answer and then a little bit longer one. That is, I teach a 14-week course, each on a different aspect of this, and I'm not going to try to do that. It's a combination of many different factors. It's like a perfect storm. There's, first of all, Muslim students. I don't know, in Emmanuel's case, how many of the student leaders that you see are from Muslim frameworks, but you see a complete massive involvement. I don't know, and I did a tour of some of the campuses in California not long ago. I also follow this closely. You have many more Muslim students on campus, all of whom buy into and promote the idea that Israel is the absolute worst country in the world, stole Arab land, all of that. And that's something very difficult to fight. If I don't even try, I admit that, because it just seems to me hopeless. Not entirely, but it's very difficult. But then you have all the other students that join in, and faculty members who really don't have a stake and don't know very much, but they've been brainwashed into thinking and believing that Israel has all these terrible properties to it. They see it on television. They see it, they don't watch television, right? They see it on Instagram or whatever social media, TikTok platform that they use, and they see this rubbed in again. And that's why I go back to the issue of Israel being turned into the world's worst violator of human rights. You don't see anything about Israeli victims. You don't see anything about the kidnappers, the hostages, and the terrible events of October 7th. So let me just add one other point, and that is all of the money that goes into this. This is a huge campaign, and that's why I come back to follow the money. In each one of those cases, especially on campuses, when they say these are student volunteers, when you look at the details, these are the same people with very well organized frameworks day after day for 20 years. And I think that's one of the things that we can do something about, is to bring out the information, certainly in the United States, and the Students for Justice for Palestine, which has direct links to Hamas and other terrorist organizations in terms of their fundraising, in terms of their leadership, are now active in Amsterdam. They're active in the Sorbonne, they're active in Sciences Po, and they're active in a number of other campuses. And that's one way to deal with it, is to look at who's funding this, where it's coming from, and is it something that can be dealt with? Is it within the democratic framework or not, or the academic framework?
And this all started in Durban?
That's the modern, that's the most recent, that's the 21st century version of anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism. Israel is an illegitimate country that committed genocide, commits genocide, apartheid. All the language we see now started then in a much smaller volume. And frankly, a lot of people, when I went to the foreign ministry at the time of the Israeli foreign ministry and said, these things have to be dealt with, they said, we've had waves like this before. Now we see the consequences of this.
So there's actually smart people behind this global campaign.
This is a strategy. It's called soft power warfare, or various other forms like that. That's one of the things that, one of the elements in the academic study that I try to build up, and that I'm told that I'm a Zionist and I have no right to write or publish on this issue.
Right, makes sense. We're going to go to Professor Valette, but I just want to say that if other people on the panel want to jump in, they want to say something, ask a question, or maybe somebody from the hall wants to ask a question, feel free. The first question I want to ask you, Professor Valette, two questions. Number one, what strategy has been successful in combating anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism on campuses? And maybe a more important question, how can higher education be leveraged to combat these issues? Can we use the role of academia not as a, well, we see it now as a problem, but can it be used as the actual solution to this global problem?
Wow, that's a great question, and like the point is, of course, we are all looking for like what are the best ways to approach our universities right now. And what we see across Europe, and maybe good to know, I'm also a member of the executive committee of the European Association of Jewish Studies, which comprises, I think, 2,000 members across Europe working in the field of Jewish studies. So we get a lot of information about what is going on in Europe, and the differences between the countries actually are vast. We have on the one hand Spain being not just barring like institutional connections to Israel, but as well Israeli scholars to conferences in Spain, for instance. And so that is even more extreme than the official BDS strategy. Whereas, for instance, in Czechia or in Poland, these questions are not at all discussed, and the relations with Israeli universities are cherished, actually. So in Europe, we have vast differences, but especially in the western part of Europe, we all have these questions. And what we see actually is that we have both in faculty and in student bodies a minority of very vocal proponents of the Palestinian cause, students for justice in Palestine, scholars for Palestine, you name it. They are very vocal, but it doesn't mean that they are representative of entire universities. I think here is one thing that is crucial in solving these discussions, and that is bringing in the silent majority, because there are a lot of people nowadays at universities that don't dare to stand up, don't dare to share their opinions because they feel intimidated, because they feel it's too complex, and so they let others do the work. And as well, as as we have seen with a lot of Jewish students as well, at least initially, they also were intimidated and as well grieving, of course, because of the 7th of October. And I think it's only the last few weeks that we can see that the younger generation, that Jewish students as well, are starting to speak up for themselves, to stand up. But this can only be successful if the silent majority is brought into the discussion. So I think that is, if you're looking for strategies in your own universities, in your own countries, look for ways to bring in the silent majority. Now, the other thing is, if this is the first time for you to get into contact with university administrators, you are probably already too late. So what you need is networks, is understanding how universities work, understanding as well the internal democracy of universities. And I think, at least in the Amsterdam case, already after the 7th of October, the 8th of October, we already started by connecting across the university, people involved, and starting discussing this with our deans, with the board of the university. So from the beginning, we wanted to be part of the discussion. Now, that is very hard, especially as we see now the encampments, where this very vocal minority actually is hijacking the debate, because they, especially through the violence involved as well, they start discussing this with the boards of universities, and these boards, what they see is we have a problem, a practical problem on campus which we want to solve. So they start debating this with the leaders of the encampments. But in many cases, they are doing this without the people that are directly affected by all of this, meaning the Jewish staff and students, but also, of course, scholars that are in actually in research projects with Israeli universities, for instance. And so a lot of scholars at universities across Europe now are having the idea, we are discussed, our future, our research projects are discussed without us being involved. And so it's very important to widen the debate and to bring in everyone that is directly affected by this. And that, I think, is also part of reframing the debate.
I want to add that we have been doing a lot of such networking over the past year, and Bart is the strategist behind many people doing hard work around the country. So we appreciate that very much. My question is, you want to maybe empower and anyone on the panel can answer it. You want to empower the university boards to take leadership. I see many organizations and people using the media to get the attention of university boards. Meaning there's an issue, they go to the newspaper loves the story, they write about it, and then the university board calls you and says, oh, I read an article about you in the media, come speak with us. What do you guys say? Is this a good strategy, or is it not a good strategy? Maybe first a pro, who says it is a good strategy? Silence.
I teach power. That's what I did, political power. And if the media is an avenue to gaining power, then you should definitely use it. Whatever sources you have, whether it's money, power, other forms, politicians' influence, the other side is exploiting all of those. So I say definitely yes. You got to play the game that's out there, otherwise you're going to lose.
Okay, I think the main strategy that is being used across Europe, and which is what I'm seeing, is people are using media in order to speak to the person who is sitting in the room next door. And I think it's a very, very bad strategy, but I'm curious to hear if any of you have, what any of you have to say on it.
I think the key is to know when you're burning a bridge and when not. So while I agree with what you said, Professor, I think on one hand, yes, it can truly be the avenue to acquiring the power you need in order to make positive change. And if that's the case, fantastic, use it. It's a medium, sure. On the other hand, you want to ensure that what you are telling the media is not a message that will then close the avenue of really speaking to the people that can make your predicament better, and ensuring that you leave a pathway there.
It's also who's doing the messaging on the media. It makes a very big difference if you have someone who's not in the academic community, doesn't use the academic language. Students who are very articulate, like yourself, are people who can really make that point well. So use the media wisely, but I wouldn't say don't use it.
Professor Vallet.
I think that I can agree with the last comment. Hey, what you need is a strategy, and at least to decide for yourself, like, when are you going to the media? When is it opportune? But there is like a whole trajectory before you go there, I would say, and there's a lot you can gain, especially by talking to people who are not yet involved, but they feel that when you approach them, they might be open to hear what you have to say and to think along. That might be like a smarter way to win over people than by blaming and shaming in the media, especially university boards. I think what you need in the end, of course, you need them as well to solve your problems. So always think like, how can we work together on this? How can we bring others into the debate and help them understand like the problems around social security for Jewish students, but as well the problems for academic collaboration with Israeli partners. These are the main topics, and like invite people in. Don't let this be just a topic of this tiny group of Jewish staff and students. Let it be a wider topic for the whole university. Otherwise, I think your cause is lost.
I'm seeking long-term strategies. Achira, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to give our perspective as a student union on this, because we know that media is a slippery slope. It can be very dangerous to burn bridges with universities. That's why when we come into the media, we play it on a personal level. We tell our own story. That's sometimes emotional, and we see that has a great impact. For example, when we tell our story, afterwards we get organizations coming to us and telling us, oh, we want to help you, want to support you, we see your pain. So media should not be a way to burn bridges, to build them.
Beautiful.
Can I add something? We're often faulted for not having a cohesive strategy, the pro-Israel camp. And that's very hard to do when you're talking about thousands of different organizations across wide swaths of area. I will say that the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel group has a very clear strategy, and it's very cohesive, and they were also prepared in a way that we weren't. What do I mean by that? On October 8th, SJP and WOL, Students Justice in Palestine and Within Our Lifetime, which are the two main groups that are spearheading these movements specifically on campus, released a branding package with their messaging. Number one was Queers for Palestine. Why? Because they knew that Hamas's track record with LGBTQ was not exactly good, and they wanted to get ahead of it. That is the kind of preparation that we don't necessarily have. Now, I'll say, and I'll say it again, I still think that we need to take things offline, because social media is a numbers game, and the game is rigged. There's just not enough of us. And I think that there are ways to play that game in a more systemic way with regard to, getting governments involved, legal issues. But in terms of offline relationships, that's where you're going to win every time. One last thing is that a little bit you need to play their game. In the States, it's intersectionality, right? All causes are together and we want to lift up minority voices. Great. So let's lift up minority Israeli voices. Let's educate them on the ethnic cleansing of Middle Eastern and North African Jews. Let's speak to them and educate them about Ethiopian history. There are ways to get in, but we need to be speaking the same language at least, or there's just no conversation that's going to be had.
Just to double up on what you said, because I do agree till a certain extent, because Europe is not the same thing as America, and the situation is not the same. But you are right, they have the numbers. And because they have the numbers, if you look, if people watch the Dutch television in the past few weeks, the spokesman for the pro-Palestinian encampment projects were horrible it was terrible spokesmanship. They were not able to articulate any idea, but they are able because they have the numbers, they don't care. And because we don't have the numbers, we just have to act with more strategy, and it's absolutely necessary. It's a necessity. Yeah, sure.
There's also the issue of money, which is why I started to look at the amount of money going into these campaigns. It's a huge amount of money. When it's 100 million euros, roughly a year, from each one of the countries in the European Union plus Norway and Switzerland, I think there we can have an impact, a much quicker impact by each government asking the question. That's why I raised the issue of Oxfam Novib, which is day after day doing the same kind of campaigns. Students, not just students, ordinary people look at, and students are not ordinary people, look at the propaganda that's put out by this wonderful humanitarian organization, which is not just one-sided. It really is, it turns into anti-Semitism. The Jews, the Israelis are causing these terrible things, the suffering of the Palestinians. The amount of money that goes into this is huge. If we can't win the numbers game in terms of the number of students in social media, we can certainly do better in confronting the governments which are blindly or knowingly turning so much money, whether it's FIDH in France or Oxfam Novib. In each one of these countries, there's a lot of money going in.
How strong is the political influence of these NGOs?
I think it's extremely strong. I think you see it on campuses, you see it in social media. They all have massive public advocacy campaigns. And otherwise...
And do they have a government oversight or any kind of oversight system?
There is no government oversight. There are no checks and balances because they are considered to be, I'll use a Christian analogy, saints, and therefore above criticism. So when I write a paper and then I get reviewed by saying, this is not an academic subject, you can't write about the failures of these organizations because they're all wonderful people, that already takes out of any kind of serious dialogue. There has to be oversight. And governments, Germany, Sasha is sitting in the corner, standing in the corner. In Germany now, with the close working together cooperation of a number of individuals and organizations, the German government has started to change its policy. The Swiss government has changed its policy. Even in the Netherlands, we've had a couple of significant changes, and the money for a few organizations has started to drop that are doing this type of propaganda.
Okay, so you're saying part of the long-term strategy is making governments aware of these NGOs that have almost unlimited power without any oversight, and they are influencing policy, make people aware, make governments aware of the lack of oversight, of their biasness towards certain issues, and you're saying that should be part of the long-term strategy.
Should be brought to governments, to members of parliament, to journalists. There are always a few journalists, again, we saw it in Germany, we saw it in Switzerland, who are willing to go against the standard party line that these are perfect organizations and they shouldn't be criticized.
Is there any community leader across Europe that is can do something with this idea?
If there's anybody here from CEDI, they've been extremely active in this area as well. In almost every country, there's a group like that.
Well, this is a beautiful point of action, and but I will go back to Professor Valette or anyone else on the panel. Before that, I do want to say about, just want to go back a second to the media. I see a lot of students that speak out in media because they feel, out of loyalty, they do it. And they go into the newspaper, and they go on TV, and they call me back. They call me 3 weeks after, and they say, well, Yankee, I shared out of emotion, I shared something in the newspaper, and now if you Google my name, this is what you see, and I just want to be an anonymous student studying medicine or law or whatever it is. And they regret it. And I think it is a responsibility of community leaders not to throw their students, their youth in the lion's den, protect them for themselves, because they're young people, they do not have a lot of media experience, and they might say some things they regret a few weeks later. So we have to be very careful, and if you want young people to go into the media, let them not use their real names, advise them to use to anonymize themselves, etc., etc. Take their social safety, it's not the physical safety, take the social safety into consideration. I think it's a very, very important element we have to think about. Professor Valette, or anyone else, long-term strategies, because we can discuss for many hours all the issues. I want to sit here in 3 years and you saying, listen, it's solved. All the universities understand Israel, they protect Israel, they speak about Israel's right to exist and defend itself. Jewish people are safe, Jewish people are part of the history and a part of the destiny of global society, etc., etc. What is the strategy? What are we going to do?
Well, I think academia is not only a problem, but also part of the solution. And at least in two ways. One, what we need is solid study and like a quest for truth. And my experience with a very diverse body of students is that once you start studying together, reading primary text together, bringing them into the field, they become excited and they become curious, and new worlds are opening for them, and also new understanding. For instance, what a concept as Zionism might mean, which is entirely different than what many of them hear in social media. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and here, of course, I speak as a professor of Jewish studies, don't let us reduce the whole debate to Israel and the Palestinians. This whole question. Jewish culture, Jewish studies, Jewish history is so richer. There is so much more into this, and especially as well, the history of Jews in Europe is so important in understanding Europe. So please keep as well the spectre wide open, and demonstrate how important Jews and Jewish history and Jewish studies are for understanding Europe itself. So it's part of European identity. So don't let us reduce to the conflict right now, because there's so much more than that.
So to summarize, before we take questions, to summarize, Giri, you want to say something before we summarize?
Yes, please.
Good.
I want to give a more direct answer on your question about visibility of students in the media. We think, I've asked this question last weekend to my students, to the leaders, and they think that if we hide our faces right now, we will put a bad example for our students. Our students are now afraid to go to the university. And if we as leaders hide our faces, that won't change. That's why I totally agree with Yanki on the point that media is still a slippery slope, but we should give our students, our leaders, the skills to operate with the media and to show them their faces, to give them the strength. Because if a student comes to me and says to me, I want to be in the media, I want to be more active, and I tell them, be active, be in the media, but be careful, do media training, collect real knowledge about the situation, and prepare yourself for being a target. And because you are a target if you stand up. But if you stand tall, you'll be a great example, a great leader, and you will give the Jewish students hope and courage.
Beautiful. So just to, I think that deserves an applause.
Yanki, can I add something quickly? I don't think that people in this room understands what these two have done. I haven't even met you, and I want to say that you probably have encountered more challenges than a lot of us. And we want to, first of all, thank you for that. And we also don't want to take it for granted. I just want to echo what you said. We need to invest in our student leaders. They are fighting an incredibly difficult fight, and we shouldn't take for granted what they're going through. And as a community, we need to find ways to support them and to fight some of the battles for them.
Beautiful, and to summarize, Achiram said, we have to empower young people. Emmanuel said, look at curriculum, influence the curricula what is being taught at universities. Alana spoke about don't wait for people to be students because it's too late. Invest while they're still teens. Professor Steinberg said follow the money, right? See where it's coming from. And Professor Valette said invest in relationships with university leaderships and use the various academic methods at your disposal in order to fight this issue and work on long-term strategies. Any questions from London? Maybe. Yeah. We have met in Budapest, right?
We did.
Maybe
Nice to see you
stand
again.
up, you say who you are.
Sure. Russell Langer, Jewish Leadership Council from the United Kingdom. Thank you very much to all the panelists for everything you do. It was a really interesting session. There's some passing references to the situation out in the US. And I think a few years ago, I would have hated myself for making this argument, but because Europe isn't the US and the US isn't Europe. But we've seen, particularly with the issue of the encampments, how something that starts on the college campuses in the US can very quickly suddenly appear on campuses in Europe in a way that probably wouldn't happen the other way around. So that link, is that something you agree that's now there that maybe it wasn't so much there in the past? And how does that change the situation if what's happening on our campuses isn't just being affected by what's the situation here in Europe, but quite literally what's happening over in the US?
Well, from an historical perspective, I think what we in 1975, the United Nations had this declaration that Zionism is racism, and that was already a moment, I think, when there were across the globe groups mobilizing around this idea of anti-Zionism. At least in student movements, this was very strong at the time as well, tied into left-wing anti-colonial discourses. So it's not entirely new, I would say. So these transnational developments. But you're entirely right. When the encampment started in the US, what I told Yankee and others is, well, let's wait for a couple of weeks, and we have it here in Europe as well. So both sides of the ocean are very, very much connected right now. So this is global in that sense. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Any other questions? Mr. Kotak from. Okay, you go first. Oh.
Yes, thank you very much. Your work needs a lot of courage. So I first of all would like to make my compliments to all of you. Starting with Achira. We had a demonstration yesterday in Antwerp, and one of the students who was speaking, she told a story about a student that showed her emotions. And she went to the desk of the university and showed her emotions. And she was told to go to the shrink. So this is how they, give an answer on a student that doesn't want to have any difficulties, and that didn't want to actually mention that she was Jewish. The second thing, we started to have a talk with these youngsters, and they told us the educational material, the books that they used and that they are using, does contain a lot of bullshit. This is the word they are using. So what we should do, in their opinion, is studying all the material that they are using at the schools, at the basic schools, at the universities, in order to make the game changer over there, because that's where it all starts.
Mr. Kotek, I'm sorry to interrupt. We have 4 more minutes left to the session. Is there a question?
Well, the question is, I would like to make the thing, or to bring forward the solution of bringing in more capital, more financing in order to study the educational material. Yes.
Beautiful, thank you. Mister, you were... The mic is coming to you. Anyone else that would like to ask a question?
I'm head of a small community in Germany, and I want to reflect on the German situation at the moment.
What city?
Bad Nauheim.
Thank you. But please keep it short, because otherwise we don't.
No,
we still have a few people.
the thing is that I believe that the professors, Jewish professors, have a job to do, because at the moment in Germany, anyway, at universities, there are so many professors against Jewish students, and especially the head of the universities are against German students, and we need to see whether the Jewish professors can help the situation by trying to persuade the head of the universities to stop being so anti-Semitic.
So you're agreeing with Professor Valette, right? He agrees with you. Thank you. Mr. Khan, you had a question? Anyone else that wants to ask? Oh, sorry, I'm looking only one direction, over there and over there. Soon, but first Roland. Let's do first him, and then we have another 2 more questions, and then we wrap up. Right, Alex?
I have a question to the representatives of the students. I mean, recently there was a little film on the social media of a Jewish student in Rotterdam that was being chased, yeah, like a new lynch party, because he was carrying an Israeli flag. How do you guys, kids, feel about safety at the universities? Do you think that as a society we do enough to protect your physical safety?
Then maybe Emmanuel wants to answer, because Achir wrote it a few times, and we have a second student representative.
It's a complicated question to answer.
You have 45 seconds.
Because the answer is no, but that also I'm not sure exactly what it would look like, because there are so many complications to trying to really tackle this issue sufficiently. A lot of European universities are built in such a public way. I'm talking about the actual architecture of the building is built in such a way that invites outsiders to join. And so all it takes is one day for encampment leaders to say, welcome for everyone. And then, you know, our campus is swarmed with people who are not even students, who show up and get violent, as we saw in Amsterdam. I was there that day. It was terrifying. So no, but I also have sympathy for the effort to try to find a way in order to ensure our safety, because it's not a simple task to tackle.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question.
Manfred, you just mentioned that the Jewish professors should talk to their campuses. I hate to disappoint you. We've built a WhatsApp group amongst professors and for Hochschulgruppen for university, both students and professors, and our Jewish professors in Germany are scared. They're scared to teach, they're scared to go to class, they're scared to go onto campus. And the answer is, we are trying to strengthen from within. Our students are not the ones necessarily to talk to the universities. And we're trying to build networks where the organizations can scandalize things, where it's not the students' faces in the press, but where it's us as organizations going out there. We're trying to strengthen our Jewish professors, trying to enforce them to get onto campus. In Berlin, for example, the head of the Technische Universität, for one of the universities, was responsible for the encampment to actually be allowed to continue to take place. That the fact that the university was ripped up from inside, that there was pro-Hamas graffiti everywhere inside the building. They were inside for a week And we're now trying to, the Central Council is now calling for her to be fired. And that's where we need to unite, and that's where all of us come in. And we're talking about this tomorrow morning, by the way, in terms of networking and strength as networks. But the truth is, individually, and individual students don't have much strength, but together we can achieve a lot, and that's what we'll talk about tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Beautiful. One last question. Anyone in the hall? Say, this Mr. in the back. That'll be the last question, and if any of the panelists still want to have 15 seconds to finish off.
Dankeschön. Hello, everybody. My name is Shai Deutsch. I'm from ICE, Israeli Community Europe. We establish Israeli immigrant communities and connect them to the Jewish communities. And from the 7th of October, the Israelis around Europe have experienced for the first time anti-Semitism and under attack. And the students in most countries, in most cities in Europe, are felt and still felt alone and with no need and response. Well, they are not familiar, they are not connected to the Jewish organizations or communities and to the Jewish students. And we understand, and now they understand, that one of the response to what's happening in communities, one of the solutions is our unity first, that we need to connect the Israeli students and the Jewish students together. And I've heard so many things about the connections in Netherlands.
So what's the question?
So I wanted to know, how did you experience that? As an Israeli, how did you succeed to do connections? And if any of you addresses the Israeli students as a unique group who is facing the situation much different than the other Jews in town?
Yeah, I will answer that. The answer is absolutely yes. We are dealing with Jewish students all over the country, but we do see that Israeli students are indeed a group of itself, a sect of itself. They, in the past, might not have always attended Jewish events. Right now, they're very much seeking out, and they want to connect, and they want to be part of the community. With that, I will allow all the panelists, please, maybe we applaud for them, and then we all have...
Also our chair.
So we each have
very good job of
15 seconds for every one of you.
I will end simply by quoting a line from the Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot. These issues are huge. But Pirkei Avot teaches us, Rabbi Tarfon, Lo alecha hamalacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin lebatel mimena. You're not required to finish the job, but you are not free to neglect it. If each one of us does a part of the job to overcome these tremendous challenges, we can win this war.
Thank you. Professor Vallet.
But two things, please look after your students, be there for them. And the second, keep believing in the search for truth and for academic virtues.
Thank you.
I mean, just don't take your student leaders for granted, invest in them, build them up, start very early, and make sure that there's community support around them as well.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
I think I'll use my 15 seconds to briefly answer what you said. I think that Israelis have a hard time connecting to the experience of European Jewry or Jewry beyond. I think, though, that they're starting to understand that it's high time that they broaden their identity while abroad. And for that especially, the key people are Olim, who have left for university. Find them, get them, and tell them to help influence the Israeli communities to broaden their social networks to include non-Israeli Jews.
Beautiful. Achira, you can...
I want to maybe even speak for all of us. If you have any ideas or root initiatives to help students in the Netherlands or in Europe, come to us, talk with each other. We can do this together.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you.